this client used to work with multiple service providers for multiple services. For example, for security, they had a different service provider. For facilities, they had a different service provider. Then for pest management, AMCs, they had a different service provider. So just to give you a background, this client they have their corporate office in Bangalore. So they have about 4 locations in Bangalore. And then they have their different sales offices and the other client offices in about 55 locations. They were looking at one single service provider who would probably be able to offer multiple services to them. So that was one. Secondly, they were also looking at some kind of a cost benefit over a period of time, right? Thirdly, they were looking at more in terms of, account management, governance. They were also very particular about compliance in terms of that. And also where they have wanted somebody to have the bandwidth across the country to manage these services. One, we had presence across the country, so we were able to do that. Second, in terms of multiple services, we were able to offer them not only what they wanted, but we could also offer a little more to them, typically in terms of AMCs. We could actually manage their AMCs directly. Third, in terms of an account management governance, so we said we brought in a key account manager who would be able to manage that account for them. Because, typically, whilst these corporate offices and the regional offices are large, the rest of them are smaller offices. If you look at the size of the offices, it ranged between 2,000 square feet to about 80,000 square feet. Right, 80,000 being the corporate, and then you could have the sales offices at about 2,000 square feet, right? And the fourth point was business continuity. Typically, the smaller offices, remote locations. So what's our backup plan? For example, if a guy doesn't turn up, right? So what's the backup plan we have in terms of ensuring that business continues and there is no service lapse? We have a dedicated transition team. Whenever we start a new client or a new site, we always have a dedicated transition team, which is a back office team. It's not part of the account team. Now, typically, this transition team would have a operation resource, would have a transition SPOC who would lead it at the beginning. You would have a HR resource, you would have a training resource. So what happens typically is let's say once you sign off the contract, right? From that time, probably, D+2, then we probably have a kickoff meeting with the client, right? So that's when we introduce the transition team. So as soon as the contract is signed off, we have a kickoff meeting between the client stakeholders and also our transition team, our operating team, and the sales team. Right, together, so that everybody's on the same page. And then what happens is we design something called a transition calendar, which is about which probably ranges between anything between 30 days to 60 days, depending on the size and the complexity of the contract. We had daily reviews to start with the client in terms of the progress. We have a tracker, a mobilization transition tracker. So you actually review that tracker every single day with the client, right? And our internal teams as well. So typically, so this transition actually lasted us for about 45 days. When we talk about security services, right? Typically, there were these small locations, right? So which earlier had guarding 24/7, which means that you had security guards physically present across 24/7, which means that you need to have 2 guards working on 12-hour shift, right? Whilst the office is open only between 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, right? So what we did is we came up with something called Mantech. Mantech is basically an acronym for manpower plus technology. So what we did is we kind of, whichever offices were not critical in discussion with the client, we removed the security guards in the night shift, right, and replaced them with something called remote alarm monitoring systems. We have a central command center in Delhi, right, which monitors all our client sites across the country, right? So let's say if there is this alarm monitoring system, takes care of tampering, intrusion, smoke, fire, any of these contingencies. So if there is any of these, there is an alarm which is pinged at our central command center, right? And what happens is we have ERTs, which is basically called emergency response teams, which is because every city, town, in our every branch, we have close to about 330 plus branches, right, across the country. So all these 330 plus branches have an ERT vehicle, right? So we guarantee a response time of about 25 minutes to reach the client location within any alarm coming in. So what happened is for this, the client, obviously, there was a huge cost saving. It actually cuts down cost by about 30-40%. One was the financials, which was basically budget versus actuals. Now, budget versus actuals typically in terms of your energy costs, your EB cost, your water costs, right? So this was one. The second was in terms of, AMCs, where they get an alert in terms of tracker mechanism, where AMCs are due, whether an AMC is completed. The third was risk and compliance management, which is basically, each of these locations might have, building licenses, lift licenses, so on and so forth, which come up for renewal, right? So we also put that into the app, so they get a tracking mechanism in terms of. So what happens is, whilst the spend, they had access to the spend in terms of month on month. So they were able to actually quantify. And what happens is the head of administration sitting in Bangalore had access to all the 55 locations. So we had a hierarchy matrix where the local SPOC had for his own office. But at the corporate office level, they had access to all the 55 locations.